At the time of recording this, Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne HD Remaster finally released in the West. This game was a landmark game for the Megami Tensei series. It was the first numbered mainline game to be released in 3D, as well as the first game where the protagonist can use magic. Most importantly, however, this is a game where the featuring Dante from the Devil May Cry series name came from. But just saying all that doesn't really describe what the game is like. As a third of Nocturne, it's a normal day in Tokyo. You're a Japanese high school student going to the hospital with some friends to visit a sick teacher. Also, the park right outside the hospital just had a brutal confrontation with two cults in which most of the members did not survive, so that's not really a big issue. When you actually arrive at the hospital, you find it's completely abandoned. You also find out your teacher is a member of one of those two cults, and she seeks to destroy and recreate the world. In most other video games, this would be the start of an epic quest to stop the world from being destroyed. In Nocturne, you don't get that chance. Now you can count the number of living humans on one hand. You're not one of them. A strange blonde boy and his nanny stuck a bug in your eye, and now you're a half-demon hybrid known as the Demi-Fiend. As the game goes on, you discover you're now in what's called the Vortex World. You're on the inside of a sphere, where the center is Kagusui, basically the sun of the world. Various factions of demons have sprung up, each seeking to gather large sums of Magasui, a type of energy, in order to get Kagusushi to reshape the world in their own image. While the overall path in Nocturne is mostly the same no matter what you do, your choices will influence which reason, or philosophy the new world will follow, you support, if any at all. Which reason you support will change some of the boss fights in the game, as well as the ending. I realize now I haven't exactly clarified what kind of game Nocturne is. Nocturne is a 3D dungeon crawling JRPG. As is series tradition, if you're not in the overworld map, you're likely in some sort of structure that could be classified as a dungeon. Even if you're actually in a town, in reality you're in a dungeon. And by that, I mean there's going to be random encounters just about everywhere. I'll go into detail on how the enemies are dealt with a bit later. As for the dungeons themselves, they're all fairly basic by SMT standards. Then again, I have a bit of experience with this series, so maybe I'm just kinda used to the BS this game isn't afraid to throw out. There's only one puzzle I remember being particularly hair-pulling, and that's where you have to open doors based off the phase of Kagusushi. Of course, this is only taking into account the base game. When Nocturne first released internationally, it was actually a release of a Japanese re-release called Nocturne Maniacs. One of the big features of Maniacs was the inclusion of a new dungeon called the Labyrinth of Amala. While nowhere near as stressful as some of the worst dungeons in the original games, or even the spiritual successor of the Womb of Grief, this dungeon does step up the difficulty by a fair ton, but it's very worth it to complete. The Labyrinth of Amala holds some of the best demons in the game, among other rewards. Now let's talk about the demons that will be harassing you throughout your journey. The objective in battle is to punch them so hard they die, but how does that translate into gameplay? While Nocturne is a turn-based game, the press turn system that first started here is a very unique form of combat. I've only seen similar things done in other SMT games. For every character on your side of the field, up to 4 with a Demi-Fiend and 3 demon allies, you get 1 press turn. Any action you do in combat but waiting costs 1 press turn to execute. However, if you hit a weakness or land a critical hit with your attack, you get half a press turn back, which can be used to perform another action. With this, you can double the amount of actions you can perform each turn. However, if you miss, or the enemy nullifies an element you hit them with, you lose an additional press turn, as well as the press turn you spent using the attack. And if your attack is drained or reflected back at you, you'll lose all your press turns, and it becomes the enemy's turn to attack. Of course, the enemy also follows the rules of press turn, so it's a good idea to have a varied mix of resistances in your party. Combat reaches its peak during boss fights, and if we're talking about Nocturne bosses, there's no better group to talk about than the Fiends. While in previous games these were hard to encounter super bosses, in Nocturne, so long as you chose Chronicles or Maniacs, you can encounter these guys as long as the conditions are right, although you only need to fight Matador and either Dante or Rido depending on your version. Let's talk about Matador though, since he's the first fiend you fight. Matador always starts the fight by maxing out his evasion. If this sounds incredibly frustrating, that's because it is! Buffs and debuffs are very important in SMT, and this fight teaches you that the hard way. Another good lesson this fight teaches you is that resistances are some of, if not the most important, aspects of a demon. You should be able to get a Nozushi just before this fight. get one. I won't say he makes the fight a cakewalk, but having one does make it much more manageable, due to it draining Matador's magic attacks. Other fun fiend fights include Daisojo, who specializes in the instant kill spells, and Trumpeter, the final fiend, who explains in detail what his gimmick is before fighting you, and still manages to be the hardest fight in the game, or at least one of them. Let's go back to normal fights, and let's say you find a sexy son of a gun that you just can't bring yourself to beat down. You can talk to demons in an attempt to recruit them to your side. Generally, conversations involve bribery, and then answering a philosophical question, like if the strong lead the weak, or if it's worth it to live if you're just gonna die in the end. You have to know if a demon just wants to be flattered, or if they actually want to hear what you have to say, although I'm pretty sure it's actually random what the demon wants. Other demons can also talk to demons, or jump in mid-conversation if they have the skills, but it's generally not worth it. Although, a few demons do get special dialogue if they talk to certain other demons. You better get good at talking to demons though. Aside from the pixie you get near the start of the game, I'm pretty sure there's only 2 demons that are given out for free, both of which show up near the end of the game, and one of which only joins you under a specific ending. While you can talk to demons to recruit them, these demons usually aren't that strong. They'll only have a few skills, and it will take much longer for them to level up compared to the Demi-Fiend. If you want real strong demons, you're going to have to learn Fusion. Fusion is just what it sounds like. You put 2 demons together, and you get a new, hopefully stronger demon in return. Fusion takes into account the parent demon's family and base level, so fusing 2 level 99 weaklings will still create a fairly weak demon. There's a few special types of fusion, such as sacrificial fusion and fusion with Mitamas and elementals, but those are kinda complicated and they take too long to explain in this video. We went over how demons get stronger, but what about the Demi-Fiend? As you punch things in the face, you get stronger, just like in real life. Eventually you'll build up enough experience to level up. When you level up, you get 1 stat point you can add to any of your attributes. There are 5 attributes. First there's Strength, which boosts your physical attack and provides a small HP boost. There's Magic, which influences magical attack and defense. Vitality, which boosts your physical defense and HP. Agility, which slightly modifies your accuracy and evasion. And Luck, which I'm fairly confident does absolutely nothing. One special thing about Nocturne is that this is the first SMT game to allow the protagonist to use magic. It's not good at all. You won't be getting the standard spells, but instead more complex spells like Tornado, which hits multiple enemies randomly. Generally, you're recommended to start with magic if you're a newcomer, but trust me, physical is the way to go in Nocturne. Especially considering there's a skill called Charge, which more than doubles the power of your next physical skill. But Concentrate, the magical equivalent, doesn't exist yet. Also unlike past games, where the protagonist can only hit something with their sword, shoot something with their gun, or talk to something, now the protagonist can also learn skills. These are learned through bugs you stick in your eyes called Magatama. Magatama modify your stats, weaknesses, and resistances, and they also impart skills. Each skill has a hidden level requirement, and if you level up and meet the requirements, you can learn the skill. But you have to be careful. There are only 8 skill slots. Both attacks and passive abilities take up a slot, and what's more, if you choose not to get a skill or you forget a skill, said skill is lost forever. Despite the visual level cap being 99, you can just keep leveling past that, so it is possible to master every Magatama. You know, if you hate yourself or something. There are a few flaws with Nocturne. The biggest one to me are the alignment representatives. Generally in SMT there are 3 sides to the conflict: Law, Chaos, and Neutral. And generally, Law and Chaos, with occasionally Neutral, have characters that represent it. These characters tend to be some of the most interesting characters in the game, and the ones from SMT2 are especially strong, being some of my favorite video game characters period. Nocturne has alignment representatives, but they're not very good. I won't spoil what these characters do to be so poor in my opinion, at least not in this video. But let's just say you're not going to be siding with any of these people, even if you don't entirely disagree with their philosophies. Now, I'd like to take this moment to wish whoever decided to code in Puzzle Boy and his whole shtick a very unpleasant day. At one point in the game, you're offered to take on a block sliding mini-game to earn a Magatama. It is not fun. It is actually negative fun, and something I dread doing every time I even think of playing Nocturne. There's like 20 levels, and they're all very difficult, and the song that plays for them is like 12 notes repeated, and you can't come back and do some of it later, You have to do it all in one go. And the worst part is that you absolutely have to do this, because the Magatama you get is one of the best in the game. It gives you a single target full heal spell, which no matter what is very useful, as well as giving you a decent boost to all your stats, and no elemental weaknesses. There's some stuff I forgot to write down that makes Puzzle Boy suck even more. So at the end of the game there's this ultimate Magatama that gives you a bunch of huge bonuses. And in order to get that, you need every other Magatama, including Puzzle Boys. What's worse, once you enter New Game Plus, which by the way there's a New Game Plus and it's kinda neat. Anyway, once you get to New Game Plus, you lose all your Magatama, so every time you play Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne, you have to go back to Puzzle Boy and play his stupid 20 minigames. And it's infuriating, and I hate him, and I hate the puzzles, and I hate the song, and I hate everything about him, and I hate him, and I hate the guy. Fun fact, this is actually supposed to be out the original version of Nocturne, and I was going to make a video about the HD Remaster once that came out. But I actually procrastinated so much that the HD Remaster did come out, and now I get to talk about the price. On the PSN store, I'm pretty sure this game costs like $10 or $20, which is a fair amount, but the HD Remaster completely blows this out of the water by being $50, $70 if you want all the DLC. And there's really no extra content to justify this price. I mean, there's manual skill inheritance now, which is a godsend, but is that really worth an extra like $50 on your game? Personally, I don't think so. But in the end, Nocturne is my favorite SMT game, and while I do feel disgusting for being a dirty pay pig and buying the digital deluxe version, I'm very glad I got to play this game as soon as I could. The main game is still amazing, they haven't touched anything there, and the only big change that I noticed was manual skill inheritance, which again is absolutely incredible. If this is your first time playing the game, then it's definitely worth picking up, although I might recommend getting the original version since that's so much cheaper and pretty much the same thing. If this is the only version you can access though, I can recommend it, but you might want to wait for a sale or something. If you liked the video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. I think the next video I'll be working on is going to be talking about the alignment reps in more detail. I cut out a pretty large chunk of the script once I decided I didn't want to spoil it, and I don't want to just leave that on the cutting board floor, so I figured why not make another video about it. And hey, that'll give me another excuse to play more Nocturne, which is always a plus in my book. But yeah, leave a like, subscribe, comment, all that. It's a command, it's not an ask.